Hey guys, in this video I combined some clips with commentary about the Bivol Beterbiev fight. The fight was very close, with Beterbiev getting a majority decision in the end. Bivol displayed great movement and footwork in the fight and excellent counterpunching. However, Artur's harder, more effective blows and his control of the ring ultimately won him the fight. In this video, I'm mainly going to just go over the differences in mechanics that these two fighters have. I can't use full speed clips, normal speed clips, because I keep getting copyright blocks. The big difference between Artur and Bivol's punch mechanics is that Artur creates torque with nearly every punch. Bivol will occasionally use a back to front or rotating movement of his body to create momentum to power the punch, but doesn't create torque and therefore loses out on a lot of potential punching power. In this video, I show some examples of Bivol successfully using torque to throw a few power shots, and they always bother Artur and even change the dynamic in the fight at times. If he did this more throughout the fight, he could have turned a few more rounds in his favor and ultimately won. In this clip, I'm going to take a look at a great counterpunch by Dmitry Bivol, and he does this routinely throughout the fight. It's a following tactic where Bivol will follow Artur's hand back and land with his own jab. Notice how Bivol is leading with the back of his hand and also lands with a bent wrist, which glances off of Artur's face. In this clip, you can see Artur's excellent management of distance, and he slips Bivol's punch and lands with his own very strong cross. Bivol throws a right here to where Beterbiev's head is, and Beterbiev slips and he's throwing a cross that lands quite well. Biggest punch of the fight so far. And a jab to finish it off. So nice job by Artur. In this clip, I show a good example of Artur creating torque with his hips. Look at his belt line. It's very subtle, and it only takes a couple of frames. All right, let's look at Artur's mechanics for a second. You're going to see him create torque right here. Right there. See that hip movement? How that hip movement starts before just a 1/10 of a second before his arm starts moving. So he's creating torque right there and now accelerating. His hip is done moving there and his arm is still going. It's subtle. He has good genetics. Subtle movement of the hip and everything follows. Excellent. Here's a hook from Bivol using his leaping style. Now he's turning his body, however, he's not creating torque in his hips to power the punch. And you can see that it lands without very much power. So you can see that Bivol is lifting his heel off the ground. Here's another example of Beterbiev creating torque. So look at him rotate his, keep a look at his belt, keep an eye on his belt line. See that move? And it's powering his upper body and powering his punch. And how his weight has gone to his lead foot. It didn't really land that well. Yeah, a little bit. But you can see what I'm talking about, right? Right there. Right there. 2 frames. Here is yet another example of Artur creating torque. There's that torque again. See that? right there, and everything's coming after that. Here's an example of Bivol throwing a hook again in his jumping style, which has no power on it, and you can see the arm moving in lockstep with the hip, not creating acceleration or torque. Look at that hip moving with the arm. It's like the Tim Bradley hook. It's moving in lockstep. And he's also bringing his heel up. And it barely moves Artur. Here's an example of Bivol using torque successfully to power his punch, and see how strongly it lands. If only he could do this more often. You know, Bivol's manipulating his weight well. He sets, and then he's immediately able to push off. Okay. Look at this. Look at that. That right there is torque. That's a great punch. That's a great example. Right there. You see that? Look at his belt line. You see that hip move first? And then everything comes after. His hips have stopped moving and his arm is continuing. Excellent. Excellent shot. I want to see more of that. If he was landing like that throughout the entire fight, he would have won the fight. Here's a great example of Bivol creating torque in his left hook. I wish he'd do this more often. You know, that's decent mechanics. You can see how his hips move before his arm, and he actually lands with some force. This punch actually turns the fight around for a few moments, allowing Bivol to control the center of the ring. However, he's not able to follow up with any strong shots, and Artur shortly thereafter regains control of the center. Here Bivol throws a right hand to the body. Notice his jumping style. He puts momentum behind the punch, but there's no torque. So this is more of the Russian style. Like, he'll hop forward and then they pivot instead of pushing off. And it just doesn't land with really any mustard. Here's an example of an unfortunately weak right hand from Bivol. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This is a really good example of lack of stability and lack of use of crossbody chains from Bivol. You guys are going to hate me for saying this, but look, he's pivoting. And he lands right here. Now look at his shoulder move forward in the socket. So he's not landing with really any stability, and he's not able to, and for that reason, he's not able to follow through and transfer his weight through his opponent. He's landing without stability in the chains that connect the shoulder to the body, the crossbody kinetic chains, including the front functional line and the superficial front arm line. It's just coming forward. How can I describe this? So first of all, you can see that it's moving in lockstep, and even when that hip ends, he's not landing with stability to transfer his weight. And there's not acceleration in that at all either. So we'll go back to the beginning. He's not creating torque, because I've shown you examples of Beterbiev created. I've shown you examples of GGG created. It's simply a pivot. His arm moves with his torso. Even when his torso ends, right about there is when he's going to land. but there's no stability in his chains while landing. And you need that to transfer the weight and to land with power. And there's just not, you can see that shoulder move forward relative to the shoulder blade, relative to the scapula, relative to the rest of his upper body. Is he's just landing with a loose shoulder with no stability. Here I go over some shortcomings of Bivol's style. You can see he's not creating torque. He kind of creates like a jump forward. So he's got some weight of his upper body behind that. But he's not creating torque and acceleration. And you can see there's one guy, I forget his name, but he does like an in-camp videos with Bivol. And it's all this same type of technique. Here I show you some poor mechanics from Bivol. Notice when he throws his right hand. And mind you, Artur is covering up. Bivol could commit to this punch. However, his right hip starts moving backwards before he's finished really making contact with his right hand. If only he landed with a little bit more stability and follow through, this could have been a great opportunity to land some strong shots. Here's another example of Bivol rotating his body, but not creating torque. When he rotates his body, he can put a little bit of momentum behind the punch, but it's not really strong. Yeah, see that? So instead of creating torque, he's just like jumping with a twist and his arm follows and just doesn't have anything on it. So that's the fight. I think ultimately, if Bivol had a little bit better mechanics, was using his kinetic chains, creating torque a little bit better, I think he would have won the fight. I think that was the difference. I like Bivol. I think his skill is excellent. He's got a lot of experience. His counterpunching is good. His body movement is good. He can fight from angles. Just needs to tighten up his mechanics. And look at his face compared to Artur. You know, I don't know if they're using CompuBox or what, but the punch count, they say Bivol landed maybe more punches, but how effective were they? You know, Beterbiev doesn't really look like he's even been in a fight. Take a look at him. Oh, he's marked up a little bit, but you know, not that much. Anyway, that's it. Hopefully this was useful. I'm going to put some timestamps here so you know you can avoid some of the dead space. I hope you enjoy it. If you're looking to improve your punch mechanics and use your kinetic chains, rewire your movement patterns to use kinetic chains for virtually every punch, check out my program, The Power Punching Blueprint, available at howtopunchharder.com. That's it for now. Like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.